Hello and welcome to the Transfers podcast powered by FootballTransfers.com, where we bring you news, insight and analysis on that most important of the least important things, football. I'm Ronan Murphy and I'm delighted to be joined this week by Paul Macdonald, the brand owner of Football Transfers and the mastermind that knows about all things estimated transfer value, ETV. Welcome to the podcast again, Paul.
Hello, Ronan. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. And obviously ETV is a big part of our daily lives and what we cover on Football Transfers. The estimated transfer value is kind of a crucial part of how transfers work and how we analyse transfers, how we see transfers. And we're using it on this Transfers Podcast Extra to look at the smartest and best business that clubs have done in recent years. So yeah, we're using it to analyse it. So some players that we'll be talking about today, their value has increased over 100 million from their transfer fee, and others, their value has increased even over 1,000% of what they were paid for. So yeah, it should be an interesting kind of rundown on how ETV works, getting an insight into it and looking at how some clubs do really good business in the transfer market.
Indeed, yeah. So I think just to give our listeners a bit of perspective on how we established and built ETV, it's supposed to be the most analytical way of valuing a player within the confines of the market and how we understand the market to exist these days. So there's a number of trigger points within the algorithm which will push a player's value up. First of all, we've got algorithms from our partner SciSports, which basically calculate player potential and player's current skill. So if a young player has a small sample size, but the algorithm thinks he's going to be a really top player, he will be valued accordingly. And likewise, if they've been playing for quite a while, the algorithm will take their skill value based on numerous metrics that SciSports calculate and then apply that to his value. And then there's other trigger points in the system as well. For example, how high a level are they playing at a certain age? So if you're a teenager, like someone like Lamal, for example, or Doué, who's playing in a top 5 league consistently and scoring goals and also playing in Europe, the chances of that guy's value being higher than others is obvious. So there's a trigger attached to that as well. There's other elements in the algorithm as well. How many minutes you've played at a certain age, and also things like have you played in the Champions League? Have you played in Europe at all? Have you made your international debut? These type of things are all triggers which, as far as the market is concerned, can increase a player's value pretty much overnight. So we include them as triggers in the algorithm. And also we update it on a month-by-month basis, just purely on a performance level as well. So if someone is really, really tearing up a league, we can expect their value to appreciate over the course of that season as well. So one of the big things we always get asked is why our younger players are valued so highly. And I think that's just a statement of where the market is these days. And if you remember when Duncan and I spoke just when the transfer window closed in January, the main takeaway from it was that the average age of signings in January 2023, which was the last big January window that had action in it, was about 23 and a half. And the average age in this window was 19 and a half. And I think that's very much representative of how teams are looking for younger players, younger talent, for a couple of reasons, one of which is the game is played at a much higher pace these days, and younger players can recover quicker potentially than older ones can. And also for that sell-on value. If that player becomes really valuable, they can sell them in the future for more. Or also, even if they're not particularly a transfer that works out, they can then try and recoup some of that transfer fee back because they're still at a relatively early point of their career. So these are all the elements that feed together to create what we think is probably the most market-leading and accurate month-by-month transfer value estimation on the market today.
Yeah, it's not necessarily just someone pulling a figure out of thin air and thinking, well, this player's worth 60 million or this player's worth 100 million. There's data behind it, there's algorithms behind it, AI behind it, etc. So yeah, we feel that it kind of gives a truer reflection of a value of a player, and it changes with the player's performance and all the other various aspects that you mentioned. So yeah, before we get into the list, or before we pick some examples, I just want to remind listeners, if they can get a chance to fill in our listener survey, the link is in the comments, in the description, etc. So if you could take time to answer that would be fantastic, because it helps us give you more content that you want to hear from us. So yeah, when I was looking at this list, two players really stood out two players whose value has increased to more than 100 million euro since they were bought. So one of those is Fede Valverde, and he was bought for 5 million by Real Madrid from Penarol in 2016, but now his ETV is 113.9 million, and that's a growth of 2,178%. So what a sign.
That's one that got away for Arsene Wenger, if you heard them talking this week. Wenger had Valverde over at Arsenal's training camp for a week just before Real Madrid signed him, so that must be the summer of 2016 or maybe just before that. And Valverde loved his time there. The players all loved him. He left with an Arsenal kit with Valverde on the back and still went to Real Madrid. Do you know what I mean? There is no stopping the Real Madrid machine when you find out they want to sign you. That's one that kind of, it typifies where Arsenal were at the time in terms of not just being able to get things done, but also just shows that when Real Madrid come calling for you, there's no other alternative. And I think Valverde's been one of the true success stories from a midfield player perspective over the last 5 or 6 years, because he's adapted his game and he's adapted his positional skills as well. Real Madrid have played him in numerous positions, played him at right back, played him as part of a front three at one point, played him as the 10, played him as one of the two holding in the three in midfield, and he's excelled at every single one of those. And he's probably one of Real Madrid's most indispensable players. So to go from a value of 5 million that Real Madrid picked him up at to his current value of well over 100, it's just testament to his excellent scouting on behalf of Real Madrid to pick up that player at that point and get him for so cheap. We know that Real Madrid don't always, certainly in the past, don't always spend their money particularly wisely, although they do it better now just by mainly picking up guys for free. But back then, that was an extremely astute piece of business, and if they were able to sell Valverde, and I don't think they ever would, then they'd be able to get probably as high a market value for the position as anybody else in the world.
Yeah, a 2,000% increase is definitely how to do business. And the other player that has over 100 million of a value difference is someone who cost a lot more money than Valverde, but at the time it was even seen as the transfer fee. I suppose there was agent fees and a lot else around this transfer, but 60 million for Erling Haaland, Dortmund to Man City in 2022. But now he's just about touching 200 million. So yeah, it's just an astronomical kind of rise in value for Erling Haaland. And we knew he was good, but I don't think we knew he was record-breakingly good for the Premier League at the time.
He's our most valued player in the system right now. I expect over the next couple of months, or maybe 6 months, if Lamal keeps up his current form, I'd imagine that he might break him and go higher. But I think it's all about the all-round package with Haaland, and also the fact that one of the elements that I didn't discuss earlier is contract length. If you're tied into a club for a long time, like Haaland is now, irrespective of whatever kind of breaks might be in that contract that allow him to leave for Real Madrid or anyone else if he wants, it is a 9-year deal that he signed. It's the longest deal of anybody in the top 5 leagues, and therefore that's the kind of financial commitment that Man City have made to him as a player, but also in turn that means that his value gets retained at that extremely high level if anybody wants to come and get him, because he's got it under contract for so long. So that's one of the key drivers. But it's also his goal scoring rate. You might say that this hasn't been his best season, and he's had numerous injuries across it, and he's actually out injured at the moment for the rest of the season probably. But he's still got an incredible goal scoring record, both in the Premier League but also in the Champions League, almost a goal a game in both. And people might say that he might go missing in matches, or he doesn't contribute as much to the overall Man City team as maybe other players do, but he's mainly there to put the ball in the net, and you can't find many players better than him that doing that in the world right now.
Yeah, we're looking at a market where kind of number 9s are at such a premium that you're getting players. Dominic Solanke was the most expensive Premier League signing last summer, and we'll see how he's doing. Getting players like Haaland, who are guaranteed goal scorers, it's kind of like finding gold or finding some sort of value in Trump's tariffs at the moment or something like that. But yeah, he is just incredible. The output that Erling Haaland has, and yeah, it's no wonder that his value continues to increase. And yeah, if someone wants to spend money, would be an untold amount of money to get it, even if it was Real Madrid or someone to come in as one of them.
There's just not that many around anymore, Ronan. It seems to be every summer we have this conversation where everybody's looking for one, and the same names keep coming up every year, and nobody gets close to Haaland in terms of being able to consistently score at that level. We've seen guys like Etikike from PSG being in it. I mean, the guy's barely played for PSG, been on loan in Germany, but he's been touted as the answer to some teams' problems at centre forward, like Liverpool, for example. But none of these guys are remotely close. And if you we're recording this in the morning after PSG played Aston Villa in the Champions League. If you look at the way that PSG set up, they don't even bother with a centre forward anymore because they've messed it up so many times. Kolo Muani, Gonzalo Ramos, these centre forwards that they've had, they haven't really ever replaced Cavani as their main centre forward, and they've spent hundreds of millions trying to do it. So even in their case, they've decided they're not even going to bother anymore and would rather play with 3 fluid forwards rather than just one centre forward. But most other teams don't have that luxury of having such great players to play across those positions, and that's why these guys that can play centre forward and score a reasonable amount of goals are held at such a high premium. And when you put Haaland's goal scoring rate and the level of contract that he's on top of that, you can see why he's valued so highly in the system.
Yeah, and one of the other teams that had a brilliant performance in the Champions League this week was Arsenal, and Mikel Merino is their starting number 9 at the moment, and that kind of leads us on to the next kind of batch of players whose value have increased more than €70 million. So one of those players whose value has increased massively, 90.8 million, it's gone up, is Martin Odegaard, who was bought for 35 million, which seems a bargain now from Real Madrid to Arsenal in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, again, Odegaard, probably a player that's not had a fantastic season this year, but I mean, we try and smooth out the rankings so that if a player isn't really performing at that higher level, it's not going to impact their value in the short term all that much. So we try and reward guys that are playing really well and give guys who aren't performing that well a bit of a break because we know the quality that they've got. And I definitely think that applies in the case of Odegaard this season. I do think that Arsenal, even though he's not been playing at his best, I do think Arsenal are a different team when he's not there. And one of the things that drives Odegaard's value as well is like he was one of the few teenage prodigies which actually made it and is actually playing football now. Most of them fall by the wayside well before now. Didn't quite cut it at Real Madrid, although he might have done eventually. He was starting to get more minutes and get into the team before Arteta made the statement to go and get him and bring him in, and basically built his team around him. And that's how much confidence he had in him. And it might have looked like a big signing, a lot of money at the time, considering that Odegaard had been at Real Madrid for a while and hadn't really done all that much. But I think his value has appreciated so much, and he's such a vital member of that team that he's probably one of the most valuable midfielders in the Premier League at the minute, simply because he's got that skill set as well. It's difficult to replace. Guile, ability to find a pass, play between the lines, that kind of thing. There's again those type of players that are in short supply these days. And when Odegaard is at his peak, not many players do it better.
Yeah, and you could imagine this current Odegaard fitting in quite well at Real Madrid. If he were to go back and cost over or his ETV of 125 million, but someone who is at Real Madrid and someone that you could see Odegaard setting up quite nicely is Vinicius Junior, and his transfer fee 45 million. Flamengo to Real Madrid in 2018, and now he's worth 122.4 million. His ETV is at the moment. So yeah, it's not surprising that his increase, his growth has been 172%, because he is one of the most entertaining players in the world to watch at the moment.
Yeah, the funny thing with Vinicius is, I think if you rewind 3 years, I think most Real Madrid fans would have said that was a waste of money, that 45 million, because it was part of Real Madrid's little run they had where they went and tried to buy as many young emerging Brazilian talents as possible, which ended with Endrick being the most recent one. But they bought the oft forgotten Renier. I'm sure you remember him. Ronan from his Dortmund days. His
diabolical spell at Dortmund, yeah, I have to say,
I don't even know where he is now. I don't know if you do. We should have probably done our research on that one. But he's certainly not at Real Madrid, to put it that way. So that one was a bit of a failure. And then the other one they signed at the same time was Rodrigo, who's also been a success. And in fact, you could say that, again, Vinicius, a guy who probably hasn't had his form since taking a little bit of a strop at the Ballon d'Or ceremony, you would say that some fans now would say that Rodrigo's probably a more valuable player That's not to say that what Vinicius Junior has done over the last couple of years should be disregarded. The guy scored in 2 Champions League finals. He's won them 2 Champions Leagues. And as much as Rodrigo has emerged as a really, really important player, Vinicius' track record in the Champions League is really something to be envied. And I think it's testament to his mental strength that he really didn't hit it off. He was arriving at Real Madrid at 17, took a couple of about 18 months to really solidify even getting a regular game time. And then even after that, very, very inconsistent. And I remember a few performances in La Liga back to back where he scored some stunning goals. That seemed to be the trigger. And he's not really looked back ever since, until you might say the last 3 months or so. And that means that his value is obviously appreciated significantly. But it is important to note, his value actually has came down in the last 3 or 4 months because his performances just haven't been at that level where they were previously. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Vinny, because I think if there's any player that at the very, very top that Saudi think they might be able to get, and we can ask Duncan about this on the next podcast, but I think they probably think they can get Vinny Jr. to come there to their league next season, and they might push out the boat to try and get him. So that's one to keep an eye on, I think.
It's something we've covered on recent episodes of the podcast, and yeah, this Saudi Pro League does have an ambitious plan, and he is the kind of prime target. And Duncan obviously mentioned recently Darwin Núñez, Gyökeres, players like these. Victor Boniface was the other one, or other big targets for them this summer. So obviously stick around on the Transfers podcast as the summer transfer window gets closer and the Club World Cup gets closer, and we'll obviously have some movement in that sort of transfers. And yeah, I had a look, and Rainier Jesus is he's on loan at Granada in the second tier in La Liga at the moment, but he's still on the books of Real Madrid, so I'm not sure they're going to get any money back for him, and he'll eventually leave.
No, yeah. There was another one at the time, Lucas Silva. I think he came from Santos, I think, for about 15 million, and it came around into that period. He was a defensive midfielder. I don't think he ever played a game for Real Madrid in the end. Again, our fantastic research here showing its true colours. So it's the two hits that they landed, Rodrigo and Vinicius, spectacular. But it just goes to show that it's so hard to even get one of these right, let alone 2 in a row that they did with those two. And it needs to be seen what happens with Endrick. Everybody thinks he's going to be the next big star, but a bit of limited game time at the minute because of how Madrid set up the front three. So. The jury's not out because he's clearly talented, but it'll be interesting to see how much game time he gets over the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's hard going to a team like that where there's such limited minutes and there's such massive pressure. So yeah, it's interesting to see how he does. So maybe he could have a career like our next guy, Lautaro Martinez, a racing club to Inter, and he's been linked many times with a move away from Inter, but he's still there, and he's worth 81.4 million now. Than when they signed him back in 2018. A lot of these transfers seem to be from the July 2018. Vinicius was then Martinez. Yeah, it was the time to buy players, it seems.
Yeah, it seems that way. I think Martinez, in the case of Martinez, I would say that his loyalty to Serie A has probably held back his value. Don't tell that to our Serie A listeners, but he had opportunities to go to various places. I think the main one that was always on the radar until people realised exactly how skint Barcelona were was they were linked with him every year and to be that centre forward, and it just never happened and never materialised because the type of money that Inter were looking for at the time, Barcelona were pretending that they had it, but they were never really close to being able to spend that type of money. And he's been linked 1 or 2 times, but the fact he hasn't been linked with moves away more suggests that he's really been content in Italy. And he's also been content at Inter to be that guy that leads the team. And is still doing it as of this week, still scoring Champions League goals, making Inter look like one of the potential teams to win this tournament. Fantastically consistent goal scoring record across all of those seasons. Just a great finisher. And all of those figures are reflected in the fact that his value has increased so high because he's been at the top of the game in terms of scoring goals for such a long time now. And the fact that his value is a little bit lower than some of the other players I'm mentioning but he is getting on a little bit in years. He's not the type of guy that's going to go for an incredible sum anymore, simply because he probably wouldn't have that massive sell-on value when he goes to his next club, which makes that a little bit more difficult to value. So just because he's valued at that value looks more at who would want to sign him next rather than actually his importance to Inter, because I don't think anybody would question that. And I wouldn't say he single-handedly helped Inter win the Scudetto and also challenge for the Champions League once before and maybe again this season. I think Inzaghi's had a lot to do with that, and the spell that he had with Lukaku in particular. But he's transitioned through various versions of that Inter team so well and still been the main man and still scored goals. And in a similar conversation to Haaland, there's not many around these days that can do that so consistently.
Yeah, and the next player on our list is someone that would, on the other hand, have massive sell-on value, but I'm not sure the team that has him or the owner that has him would want him to go anywhere, because he is Chelsea at the moment. Cole Palmer, Man City to Chelsea, September 2023, 47 million, now worth 117.4 million, which isn't a surprise because he seems like the one that got away for Pep Guardiola and Man City.
Just very strange, that one. Very strange. I mean, fair play to Palmer for choosing to move on and try and get some game time. But if you look at the signings that Pep has made since, Palmer is just better than those players. He's better than Savinho. He's better than Doku. All these wide players that he's rotating through right now, Palmer would be better than all of them. And yet maybe it took Palmer to go away and get consistent game time somewhere else where he felt like he was the main man in order for this version of him to be unleashed. That's often been the case with some players. But Pep's got to wonder if he still had him, what his team would look like now and what their league chances would be like, because it's particularly with De Bruyne leaving this summer. I mean, you could just totally see Palmer slotting right in there into that team and being the De Bruyne of that team. So yeah, it's hard to call a €47 million sale like a flop sale in terms of one that teams shouldn't have made, but it probably is, because like Man City are going to probably spend 2, 3, 4 times that in order to try and find a solution in various ways to one that was already at the club in the first place. And as performances at Chelsea have been superb. Again, like a lot of the guys on this list, a little off the boil at the minute, not in the best run of form, but maybe saving himself for a decent run in for Chelsea as they've gone for Champions League football.
Yeah, and there's that extra Champions League place was obviously confirmed with Arsenal's big win this week. So yeah, Premier League definitely getting a 5th Champions League place. So there's a good chance that Chelsea could be the team to play in that. But one team that's certain of that Champions League place is Liverpool and their genius signing of Alexis McAllister, and it was 42 million. Brighton to Liverpool 723. And McAllister is, if we had it on this list last month, he mightn't have been on this list, but he is now. He's gone up 75 million in price since Liverpool bought him back in 2023.
Yeah, those Brighton boys, they know what they're doing, don't they? And Brighton's ability to extract value actually wasn't too pertinent in this case, because McAllister had a release clause from Brighton, which meant he actually left for quite a bit less than Brighton have been asking for the likes of Mitoma or will ask for Baleba, for example, this summer. So Liverpool really got a bargain there, and they've got a guy who's going to be in the centre of that team probably for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And there's just so much to be said for that level of consistency. Like, it's one of the things that is hard to kind of nail down when it comes to Chelsea signing so many players and testing out so many players. You can run through as many players as you want, but you want to have a consistency and at least one part of your team. And Liverpool having McAllister in there for so many games in a row without him being injured or without him being out, it's just an important, consistent part of the side. And not only that, he helped Lionel Messi win a World Cup. I mean, there's a lot of value in that as well, and he'll continue to play alongside Messi for as long as Messi is available for Argentina. He's just got quite a lot of strings to his bow. He can be combative, he can pass it, he can get forward, he can basically fill in all those positions. He's got an immense engine. He can go to Argentina 10,000 miles and play games and come back and still slot in the team. Just a very, very astute, very typical Liverpool signing, actually, in terms of the value that they got him for, but the immense added on value that player has given. You would say that Van Dijk, Salah, these type of signings that they made in the past, even you would say Gakpo right now, Firmino, these guys that they spent not a huge amount of money on. In the case of Van Dijk, it was a lot at the time, but Van Dijk's value probably doubled in that time. They're very good at picking up in that middle tier market, but then making these guys superstars and increasing their value while they're there. And that's exactly what they've did with McAllister.
Yeah, and it's what they'll hope to continue to do, because they didn't spend big last summer, but maybe one of the players that they did spend money on, Marmardashvili, he's going to come in, and you wouldn't be surprised to see him become the number one, his value to increase, and that kind of trend to continue. And then whoever they have a look at this summer, the same happening again. And yeah, a lot of players tend to increase their value in percentage over at Liverpool. And yeah, so there's players that we want to have a look at now as well that have over 700% increase in value versus transfer fees. Some of these cost a bit less, but we mentioned Fede Valverde earlier. His value has grown by over 2,000 from the 5 million they paid before. And we're coming from mentioning Brighton with McAllister, and one of the players is a Brighton player. It's a Matoma. He cost just 3 million for Brighton in 2021, and now he's worth 49.2 million ETV he has. So yeah, that's an increase of 46.2 million, or 1,540%, which I wish my bank would give me interest rates like that on my deposits.
A very good example of Brighton. Like, I think a lot of people maybe think that Brighton's strike rate for buying players is maybe better than it is, right? Because Brighton do go through a lot of players. If you look at Brighton's list of signings that they've made, they do take a lot of punts, and the ones that they do get right are they get spectacularly right. But there's other ones that they just don't work out, and everyone moves on because it's only Brighton, and they make the money back from guys like selling McAllister and players like that anyway. So Matoma is very much one of those. But I would say in his case, if they were to sell him this summer, if the Saudis come back in, they're going to get a hell of a lot more than that ETV for him, simply because they already bid more than that last summer, and Brighton refused to sell him. I think he's got so many attributes that make him perfect for the Premier League. There would be a real shame if he went to a league which is about 50 times slower potentially than the Premier League, because he's so quick running with the ball and without the ball, such a good touch, able to play at pace, able to play across the front. He's a really, really great player. And also, one of the things that Brighton obviously look at is they've got a very specific skill set that they look for each position, and only try and scout to that skill set, and Matoma fits it absolutely perfectly. So yeah, I mean, if it was so easy to go and pick up all these guys at 3 million, then all the big teams would do it, and Man United wouldn't have spent £1 billion over the past 5 years to have the team that they've got right now. So testament to good scouting and how hard it is that a guy like Matoma can succeed.
Yeah, and some of those players that are obviously found outside the big 5 leagues, and that's where value was often found. And yeah, Federico Di Marco, he was playing in Switzerland, Sion, but Inter splashed out 5 million for him in again July 2018. Seemed to be the time to buy players, and yeah, now he's worth over 55 million. So yeah, he's the other player that's whose value has increased over 1,000%. So yeah, another shrewd signing for Inter.
I love DiMarco. DiMarco's getting on in years a little bit. He's not one of these young signings that have progressed and developed, which is why he's probably not worth even more, because he is probably worth more not only to Inter but also to Italy. Just one of the best technicians with his left foot in the game right now. Plays predominantly on the left of Inzaghi's 3-5-2. Ability to get back and defend, but also get up and score some spectacular goals. Is really makes Inter, because there are a lot of elements of that Inter team which can be quite functional, particularly their central midfield and their defence. But guys like Martinez and Thuram and DiMarco really make them worth watching on a regular basis. And also another big tick in the box for how Inzaghi's really unleashed him, because he's been there for a while, but he's only really became the player that we know over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think Inzaghi's really helped with that development as well.
Yeah, a lot of it depends sometimes on your environment or the coach you have, and a good environment for players to progress has been Brentford, as well as in recent years. Brighton obviously get a lot of plaudits, but Brentford in recent years has been a place to develop players. Brian Mbeumo is the next one on our list, growth of 786% from the 6.5 million that Brentford paid from Troy back in 2019.
Yeah, I think they were in the second division when they picked him up, and I think that was one of Brendan's Brentford's key scouts, which went and recognised him and brought him in. The only surprising thing for me from Mbeumo is he's still there. With no disrespect to our Brentford fans that listen, he should really be playing at a higher level. I think I've always thought that if Salah were to move on, he'd be perfect for Liverpool. He's got a similar profile. He can cut inside, score goals, is quick, gets up and down the pitch. Just a really all-rounded, fantastic player. And the only reason I can think why he's not moved is because Brentford probably just asked for way, way, way too much money. I know that Arsenal have been linked with him in the past as well. I think last summer or maybe the summer before. He's got a lot of elements to his game which suit those teams and also suit the Premier League. And yeah, he developed into that player with the more that he played at this level and the more that he's been seen as a key figure in that Brentford team, just the better he looks. And again, he's been here for a while now, so it's not like he's a young talent emerging. He's still got plenty of years ahead of him, but not as many as maybe some of the younger players. And he's probably a good example of that shift to young talent, which means that the ETVs have to shift downwards with it. If players are looking more for young players, it does mean that if you're 27, 28, 29, that used to be the peak of your career. And it's not anymore. It's almost like you're in last chance saloon for your final contract at that age now, which is depressing for us as we reach our later years in life, Ronan. But it's just unfortunately true. And that's not to say that these guys don't have value anymore. They obviously do, but just not that level of where a club will go and pay an exorbitant fee to get you, because there's just too many downsides in picking up somebody in that age range these days when you know the rest of the market isn't looking for a player like that potentially.
I have to let the world know that my ETV is going to continue to decline in my later years. But yeah, my footballing, my best footballing days are behind me. But I was asked to join an over 35s football team recently, so I might consider that. My 6-year-old plays for the team's rivals, so that could cause some big family divides. Yeah, it could be a big issue. So we'll have to work out that when we get there. It could be a war in my house. So if I'm not around for future episodes, you'll know why.
We need to figure out what the biggest in-household ETV range is from oldest to youngest. That'll be. I don't know if we want many more examples of that.
Yeah. There's only potential for growth with my youngest and my eldest, but not so much for me. I'm in the decline. But someone who has gone up, and you mentioned Arsenal as a possibility for Moemo in the last one. Arsenal have Gabriel Martinelli is one of their players who's proved a magnificent signing for just 7.1 million, and how he's come on in recent years. He's kind of been a revelation in the Premier League.
Yeah, Martinelli's one of those players where people just forget he just arrived one day and started playing, and everybody assumed that he came through the youth system or he'd always been there or something. And it hadn't. It was just a great piece of scouting to pick him up. And sometimes you just need that. You just need one of these deals to work out for you. And God knows so many of the big teams go scorched earth on young talent these days that it would be amazing if at least one or two of them didn't work out, but a lot of times they don't. And it's testament to Martinelli's skill set that he can quite a big jump in level. Let's face it. We're talking about Vinicius and Rodrigo and these guys earlier that took quite a long time to adapt to playing in La Liga. Martinelli hit the ground running quite quickly. Then kind of went through a bit of a fallow period where he was injured for a fair bit, but also was still struggling a little bit with his game. And then he kind of recovered to become one of Arsenal's most important players again. And if teams could spend that type of money and get that type of return from a dedicated forward on a regular basis, then the transfer market as we know it would cease to exist, because it would be just easy to go and pick up these gems from elsewhere. But it's not that easy, and there's not that many players like Martinelli out there.
Yeah, and you have to have scouting departments and scouts in the right places. And obviously South America has been a hotbed of talent for a long time, but picking the right players is not really hard to do. And Bayer Leverkusen are a team that I know from experience and from watching them and having spoken to people around the club that they are a team that extensively scouts South America. They have players and legends around the club that kind of help facilitate the younger players coming through into the team, and they have kind of local communities. They have lots of Spanish speakers at the team. And Piero Hincapié, when he came from Talleres to Leverkusen in 2021, he was one of those players. That's why he chose Leverkusen. That was one of the reasons he came through to there. And they spent 6.4 million on him. Now he's worth over 60 million. So yeah, that's a growth of 845% percent, and this is kind of where you have to look for these sort of players, but you also have to have the drawing power to bring these players to the club, because imagine if you're a young player in South America and you're pretty talented, you'll have a lot of people in your ear.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's not like a case of clubs are going, why don't we try that new market, Brazil? I hear there's some really good players out there. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, everybody's already got scouts out there. As much about being able to get that kind of stuff over the line, as you mentioned, Ronan, than it is being able to identify the talent in the first place. Because there are thousands of scouts all over the country watching hundreds of games and seeing loads of players. And like in the example of Valverde we mentioned earlier, sometimes a big fish just comes along and swallows you up and takes someone away. And if those guys are coming asking, it's difficult to knock them back. You're never going to get Real Madrid shutting your door twice, or Barcelona, or these type of teams. So you need to be able to offer a more holistic package to these guys. And it's difficult. Like, we know that. Like, if to take it back to Scottish football as an example, how many times young Scottish talent get offered a new contract to stay at the club, but then someone from England comes running and says, here's 8, 9, 10k a week, come down and sit in our under-21 bench for the next 5 years. That's what happens quite a lot. And it's not because these guys aren't good or talented. It's just, it's twofold. It's easy for English clubs to come and take them, but also they just can't turn down the money. And it's very difficult to kind of turn a player's head and say, listen, you can turn them down just now and we'll make you a better player over here, in the case of Nkappi, who probably got loads of those offers, versus going to Real Madrid, and you can tell your mates you played for Real Madrid, but nobody will ever remember you were there, unless you're really exceptional and can really stand out. It's a hard discussion to have if Real Madrid have got a pen in your hand asking you to sign. But that's why the scouting departments at the likes of Brighton and Brentford and stuff do so well to get these guys in the door in the first place, because it's so competitive out there. And Real Madrid and Barca in particular obviously they kind of speak the same language, so there's a lot more integration into La Liga teams than there is in potentially going somewhere else. And it's difficult to entice them to somewhere where the rewards in terms of playing time will probably be way higher, but the accolades and the kind of the reverie around the team that you might be going to isn't quite as high. With the greatest respect to Leverkusen, who are obviously league winners last season, it's not quite as sexy as living in Madrid or Barca. So there's a full holistic scouting package which goes around getting these guys, which is more than just saying he looks like a good player, because there's probably 100 other people that have already identified that. It's about how you get it over the line.
Yeah, there's obviously different paths to success and different paths to the top. And the last player we're discussing today is a player who seems kind of destined to the top, but has been around a small bit already, despite his young age in English football. And he got from Middlesbrough to Aston Villa in just last summer, and 9.4 million last summer and 79.6 million ATV now. So Morgan Rogers, he has been just like a different story. I know fantasy football players that are fantasy Premier League had them all in their team at the start. Everyone had the exact same team before the season kicked off, and they were hoping he was going to be brilliant. But yeah, after a small adjustment period, we see he really is the real deal.
Well, I think a lot of people might say that he's in a similar boat to Cole Palmer, in that City had him, and he's the type of guy that City would love to have. But I think the difference between Palmer and Rodgers, and maybe this might be a bit more harsh on Rodgers, is that Palmer, even when he made appearances for City, the way that he looked part of the team was obvious, whereas Rodgers never really got there and spent time at Borough and loan and stuff like that. And his potential looked a wee bit more difficult for City to unlock. So I can understand why they kind of took the money in that case. And listen, that's part of City's policy. City develop loads of young players and sell them for that 20 to 25 million pound range, and it allows them to go and do the business that they want to do that summer. In fact, that's why they were able to do the crazy spending that they did in January this year of 178 million or whatever it was, is because they sell guys like Gavin Bazunu for 20 million and Romeo Lavia, Harwood Bellis, Delap, these kind of guys, but they collect 20 to 25 million every time, gives them a big pot of money because these are homegrown talents in a lot of cases, and allows them to go and spend, and it means they're not breaching UEFA rules and they're not breaching Premier League rules either. So City have to keep doing that in order to allow the manager, Pep, to go and spend it on the players that he wants. So there are going to be some that you let go that you wish that you hadn't. And I think in the case of Rodgers, I think that he is a spectacularly good player. But again, it's one of those where I think Unai Emery as a manager has completely unlocked how good a player he actually is. And I think it's, as you said earlier, Ronan, sometimes you just land in a place with a coach who just thinks you're the best thing ever. And I think that's what's happened to Rodgers at Aston Villa. He seems so comfortable there playing under Emery. Emery trusts him completely. And he's moving to another level with each passing week, scoring in the Champions League now as well. So I can't really blame City as much for that one, but it's another one where if City had kept all these guys, what kind of team would they have now? Do you know what I mean? There'd be no problem in this in terms of this transition period that they've supposedly got to get rid of guys like Silva and De Bruyne and move to the next level. The next generation were kind of always there. It just meant that you don't really always see what's in front of your eyes. And I think in the case of Rodgers, it's just one that got away, but it's one of those that worked out perfectly well for everybody because his talent has been completely unlocked by Emery, who's just so good at this.
Yeah, I don't think he ever would have probably got the chance. Maybe Palmer would have got the chance that he stuck around. But I'm not sure Rodgers would, and he wouldn't be worth just that ETV that he has today because he wouldn't be getting those Champions League experience that he's got at Aston Villa. And onwards and upwards, and we'll see what the future holds for him too. It's time for the hero and villain of the week, and this week's hero, I'm going to go for PSG's Desiree Doué, who's a breath of fresh air at football, and we're kind of seeing robotic footballers. We see these kind of overcoached footballers, but Doué, no, he kind of harks back to time of old. And Kvaradona as well for PSG, he's a bit of the same. That's what I want more of, and that's what we want from the Champions League. But I mentioned on the podcast before that the Champions League phase was a complete waste of time, and yeah, PSG's continued dominance in the tournament is again showing it. Champions League phase, complete waste of time, but they'd be villains. So no Ronan, bad Ronan. Yeah, so we're going to go for Doué and Kvaratskhelia as the heroes of the week this week.
Yeah, on exactly the same topic, because anybody who likes football would have enjoyed watching PSG the other night. Nicolas Jover is my villain of the week. He is Arsenal's set piece coach, who was trying to persuade Declan Rice to cross a ball into the box, and instead Rice put it in the top corner. And my message is, set piece coaches, please sit down and let the footballers play football, please, because it's way more fun than whatever you've got planned. Yeah,
short and sweet. So thanks for that, Paul. And to our listeners and viewers, obviously they're watching the YouTube version or watching the clips today, please do fill in our listener survey in the comments, description, etc. Yeah, we really appreciate it. It helps us provide you with more of the content that you want and maybe take away some of the content you don't want, but the less said about that, the better. So you've been listening to the Transfers podcast powered by FootballTransfers.com. If you liked what you heard, please follow, share and rate us. Your support helps us bring you more news, analysis and insight. You can message us on Instagram, YouTube and Facebook at Transfers Podcast. Our Twitter and Blue Sky address is at Transfers Podcast. Paul is on Twitter and Blue Sky at PaulMcDFC. I'm at Swear I'm Not Paul on Twitter and at Ronan Murphy on Blue Sky. Our production, as always, is by Mark Caulfield at Pro Podcast Production, and our music is by Mark Caulfield and David L. Stay safe, be well, and thank you for listening.
Ian McGarry, who left us and wasn't known for a couple of years. Duncan was old. Now he's back with a new show. It's called The Transfers. It's where everyone's gonna go. The Transfers, the Transfers, the Transfers. Where everyone's gonna go. Where everyone's gonna go. The Transfers, the Transfers, the Transfers. Where everyone's gonna go. 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 Where everyone's gonna go.